uncomfortable. I mean, we were getting ripped off like you wouldn't believe. We paid 4.6% of our GDP to NATO, and you had countries like Germany, economies like Germany that were paying nothing. Why are we protecting? Why are we protecting Europe? Why are we the only people writing the check? Why are we the only people protecting South Korea from North Korea? Why were we doing that? Why could Taiwan have tariffs on the United States, yet, we're the one thing that probably stops China from invading them, right? I mean, why are we doing any of this? Why are we the police force for the entire world and we get nothing back? We have a hurricane that hits South Florida, right? Does anybody write us a check? Does anybody send people in to try and help us? Yet every other country in the world gets devastated by natural disasters, and who's the first one there? America, the Red Cross, etc. We're the most philanthropic country in the world, and it's always ignored and is never appreciated. And Donald Trump is changing that every single day.
Hope you guys remember in the beginning of the war, they imposed a lot of sanctions on Russia. And when we asked them why all the sanctions, we were told that they imposed all the sanctions on Russia just to make sure that the Russian economy crumble or collapse to a point whereby they cannot fight against the Ukrainians again. 3.5 years down the line, almost 4 years now, we've realized that the opposite is rather happening. I've reported this several times on this platform that when you currently check the relationship between Uncle Sam and the EU, things are not actually going well. Right? But they are trying to cover it up. They are trying to act cool for the whole world. They are trying to prove to all of us that things are actually going well between them. But things are really not clicking well. And one interesting thing about me is I continue to quote their own sources. I'm not quoting from Russian source or Belarus source. I am quoting from Uncle Sam and Western sources. Well, let's go into the details of the story. So this is from Bloomberg. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm going to read the most important part for you guys. US-EU trade deal on blink is a question. EU leaders are pushing back on new US demands that could jeopardize a recently struck trade deal, Bloomberg reports. In a new proposal, the US is seeking a more fair and balanced approach to trade, targeting EU regulations on digital services, technology, and climate change emissions. Brussels sees them as significant concession, and some worry the demands could undermine the hard-won 15% tariff ceiling on EU exports to US. The stakes are high, with tariff still looming on steel, aluminium, and more. As both sides gear up for fresh talks, the EU is worried that the latest US move could destabilize the agreement. This is one thing that I love about America. I love America. I love America. Uncle Sam thinks about their own interests. They don't care about you. So Uncle Sam told them to sanction Russian oil and gas. And instead of them to think about the consequences, all of them started running around with anti-Russian narrative and decided to sanction Russia. Today, Uncle Sam is buying uranium. Are you aware that Russia remains the #1 exporter of uranium to Uncle Sam? Whilst they are telling the Europeans or Western Europeans to sanction Russia. And these guys couldn't think about the whole thing critically before imposing the sanctions. That is why leaders like Viktor Orban and, what is his name? The Slovakia president. That is why they continue to criticize them. That is why they have decided not to follow this anti-Russian stance. And look at what is happening today in Hungary. The economy is still doing fine. They don't have problem with anybody. Well, you know how we do it. I am going to give you guys most of the important updates in this video. Support the channel or help this video go far by hitting on the like button. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe. So Vladimir Putin released a press statement today, and in the press statement, Vladimir Putin said Ukrainian soldiers are currently losing and they are withdrawing most of their troops from the front lines. But in their withdrawal, they are trying to prove some sort of victory to their Western partners. So they continue to target innocent Russian civilians. Now, the big question is, why is this happening? Those of you who follow this conflict closely, you realize that in between every August to December, the Russians always rain missiles on Ukrainian electrical infrastructure. But this time around, Volodymyr Zelensky came out and said, if the Russians destroy their electrical infrastructure, they will also target Russian oil and gas pipelines. It didn't take long for the Russians to figure out a way to protect their refineries, which I showed you guys the other day on this platform. They've decided to cover up most of their refineries with net, making it impossible for these Ukrainian drones to destroy their refineries. Although the Russians carry out these attacks every year, but the current attacks on Ukraine is unprecedented. It has never happened in the history of this particular special military operation. Now, the Russians are launching more drones and missiles. Well, the Ukrainians realize that, targeting Russian oil pipelines will be very difficult for them this time around. And that is why the Ukrainians are requesting for American-made Tomahawk missiles. I know probably most of you have already heard about this story. So the Ukrainians want Tomahawk missiles from the Americans, which is a long-range weapon. Now, when you look at these Tomahawk missiles, that would be direct involvement of America, because it is totally impossible for the Ukrainians to operate these Tomahawk missiles. They are precision missile systems, so they communicate with satellites. So only a country with satellite can actually control this missile. So clearly, this means America have to get involved. And this whole Tomahawk missiles issue have become a problem for both the Ukrainians and the Americans. The Americans have not given any definite answer to this particular Tomahawk missile system. But what we all know for sure is, even if America would deliver these Tomahawk missiles, that means Western Europeans have to buy this weapon and give it to Ukraine. And one thing about operating communication or satellite weapons is it is very expensive. Now the question is, does the Europeans have the money to buy these weapons in large quantity? Another big question is, does America even have these Tomahawk missiles in stockpile, which can actually help the Ukrainians in a long run? So in recent days, I played Donald Trump video here for you guys, and less than a week ago. And Donald Trump was talking about rebuilding the American army to counter Russia and China military threat. So when you combine the dots together, you realize that the Americans don't actually have this Tomahawk missiles in stockpile. Meaning, remember the ongoing war between the Russians and Ukrainians. Uncle Sam, I told you guys this before, that Uncle Sam decided to push in a lot of weapons, and they are now at a point whereby they are vulnerable. Weapons that was meant to protect their own country, they've decided to push these weapons to the Ukrainians. And that was not even enough. They decided to even take some weapons from South Korea and give them to the Ukrainians. So Uncle Sam is currently in a position whereby they have to produce weapons to protect their own country first before they can go outside. This has always been the policy of Donald Trump. That is a major factor, because Ukraine is not just fighting against any ordinary country. They are fighting against a superpower, right? And this is a country that have the capability to shoot down some of these long-range weapons. This is a country that can also fight back. So it's not like you will just deliver some 1 or 2 long-range weapons expecting it to do all the magic for you. Remember in, Ukraine counter-offensive back in 2023, many weapons were given to the Ukrainians, but it couldn't change anything on the front lines. Yes, they can launch, these missiles into Russian territory. But the point is, when you look at the bigger picture, these missiles are not going to change the course of the war entirely. That is the fact. And once again, the Ukrainians are talking about game changer weapon, which is the... We've heard this a million times. Remember when the war broke out, we were told that all what the Ukrainians need was javelin. Javelin was sent to them. They said it was a game changer. At a point, they started requesting for tanks, which, NATO hesitated a little bit for a while. But in 2023, they decided to deliver these tanks to the Ukrainians. Remember, they gave them M1 Abraham tanks, they were given Leopard 2 tanks, they were given Challenger 2 tanks, they were given long-range weapons like HIMARS, yet it couldn't change anything on the front line. Well, let's talk about other issues. India, China, and Russia is demonstrating to the whole world that we can actually do it without Uncle Sam or the West. Something interesting is happening between Russia, China, and India. Remember I told you guys about India. Some people kept telling me that India can be trusted, India can be trusted. And I kept telling you guys that look at the history of India. And you realize that it is in the good interest of India not to decouple their economy completely from the Russians. Well, India has now started buying Russian oil and gas using the Chinese yuan currency. So they are bypassing Uncle Sam dollar. I don't know whether to call this good news for BRICS or a blow to Uncle Sam. I don't know which is which. Well, let's talk about Cuba. So Cuba is trying to send around 25 to 26,000 troops to support Russia. I don't know the reason. I don't know why they are doing this, but I believe that, they are doing this because of what the Russians did for them back in the Cold War. The North Koreans did the same thing, but what the Cubans are doing is unprecedented because no country has sent around 26,000 troops to support Russia. Cuba is the first country to send such large amount of troops to support the Russians in the ongoing war in Ukraine. Well, interesting time ahead. We will continue to follow the story, and I'll continue to remind you guys. Wait. Another issue is happening between Venezuela and Russia as well. There's a new contract signed between Venezuela and Russia. But I don't actually know the full details of this contract. But according to many experts, this is a military cooperation. So all I know for now is this is a military deal. But I don't know whether this military deal is purposely to counter against Uncle Sam in the Caribbean or not. I still don't have the full details of this particular story. I'll continue to follow this story as well. If anything comes up, I'll update you guys. If there's anything you want me to talk about, let me know down in the comment section. I love you guys. You know how we do it. If you watch the video to the last end, let me know where you are watching this video from. Which country? Love you guys. The rate in which you guys have supported this channel is actually, strange because it barely happens. It's not everybody that succeed on YouTube in this short period of time. Really appreciate each and every one of you, your support. Shalom. See you guys in the next episode.